The city lights glowed like restless stars over Atlanta's skyline, mirrored in the glass walls of the Ross Foundation Gala. Malcolm stood at the edge of the balcony, the night breeze brushing against his tailored black suit, his face carved in calm detachment. He told himself he was done with love, that emotions were liabilities men like him couldn't afford. But as laughter spilled from the ballroom and a soft jazz melody floated through the air, something shifted. Across the room, her smile caught him off guard. A quiet storm, gentle yet relentless. He couldn't look away. The noise dimmed, time slowed, and every rule he had built around himself trembled. He didn't know her name, but her presence felt like truth. For the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't calculate. The night ended, but Malcolm's thoughts didn't. He'd shaken countless hands, accepted praise, and yet her face haunted the edges of his mind. There was something disarming about the way she carried herself, unbothered by the power in the room, unaware of how her presence pierced through his armor. In his world, everything had a purpose, a plan, a cost. But that moment, her smile had none. And for a man who built empires on certainty, that frightened him more than failure ever could. Ariel sorted through her camera gear the next morning, humming to herself, pretending she hadn't felt that electric pull. She wasn't used to men like him, the type who walked through rooms like they owned the air, but something in his eyes had felt lonely. The kind of loneliness that speaks without words. She told herself she'd forget him, but art has a way of betraying truth. When she looked at the photos from the gala, she froze. He was there, blurred in the background of one shot, looking at her. Malcolm arrived at his firm, sharp and composed as ever. His assistant spoke, investors waited, and he played his role, unshaken, untouchable. Yet between numbers and negotiations, his mind drifted. It wasn't desire that unsettled him. It was recognition. For the first time, someone had seen him. Not the millionaire, but the man beneath. And he wasn't sure if he wanted to run from that or chase it. Ariel's phone buzzed that evening, a call from an unknown number. A deep, steady voice on the other end thanked her for attending the gala. She recognized it instantly. His tone was composed, but something about it felt unsure, almost hesitant. He asked to meet, to discuss a potential photography commission. But both of them knew this was about more than work. As she ended the call, she caught her reflection in the window, smiling despite herself. The next afternoon, sunlight poured through the windows of Malcolm's office as Ariel entered with her camera bag slung over her shoulder. It was supposed to be business, a simple creative proposal. But the air between them hummed with unspoken energy. He extended his hand, polite, composed, yet his eyes betrayed a flicker of something softer. Ariel spoke with her usual warmth, explaining her artistic process, but even she felt the strange pull beneath every word. His office, so sleek and controlled, suddenly felt too small for the space their silence occupied. Somewhere between the click of her camera and his steady gaze, something shifted. Two people trying not to fall, already halfway gone. Ariel began taking test shots for composition, pretending to ignore how his presence filled the room. Her fingers moved with precision, framing light, adjusting exposure. But her heartbeat betrayed her calm. Malcolm stood still, letting her guide him. A man used to power, now following quiet instruction. She asked him to relax, to let the camera see him. When his eyes finally softened, she clicked the shutter. The sound echoed through the office like an exhale. Neither of them realized I'd been holding. He surprised her by asking about her art, not as a client, but with genuine curiosity. She told him photography was her way of making people see what they try to hide. For a moment, her honesty silenced him. He realized how rare it was to be seen without an agenda. As she spoke, the light caught her profile just right, and he thought how effortless she seemed. How dangerous that could be. After the shoot, she packed her gear, ready to leave, but he hesitated. For a man who calculated every move, this pause was foreign. He offered her coffee, a gesture too simple for what it meant. She smiled, declining softly, saying she preferred tea. Their laughter filled the quiet space like music too delicate to break. She promised to send the proof soon. As she reached the door, he said her name for the first time, and in that one word, something intimate lingered. That night, Malcolm found himself scrolling through his phone, waiting for an email that hadn't yet arrived. He told himself it was about business, but even he didn't believe that. Across town, Ariel sat editing the photos, each image revealing more than she intended. In one frame, his eyes seemed almost pleading, as if searching for something only she could give. She saved the file, leaned back in her chair, and whispered a truth she wasn't ready to face. She wanted to see him again. The photos were stunning. Every frame captured something raw. Not the polished image Malcolm showed the world, but the man beneath. When Ariel delivered them to his office, their eyes met again, and silence did what words couldn't. He thanked her, his voice calm, yet his gaze lingered too long. She smiled, professional, pretending not to feel the tension pulling like a thread between them. He reached for the envelope, his fingers brushing hers. The moment was fleeting, electric, and terrifying. She stepped back first. He let her go, because control, even now, felt safer than truth. Later that evening, Malcolm sat in his car outside her studio, engine off, headlights dimmed. He told himself he was just passing through the neighborhood, but the truth pressed heavy in his chest. Inside, he saw her silhouette through the window, hair tied up, music playing, lost in her work. He could have gone in. He didn't. Sometimes denial isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the moment you choose distance over desire, because wanting someone means surrendering something you can't control. Ariel's friend. Janelle teased her over coffee the next morning, calling her out for smiling every time Malcolm's name came up. Ariel brushed it off, claiming professionalism. But deep down, she felt something shifting. Something she didn't ask for. Love wasn't supposed to fit into her plans either. She'd built her peace after heartbreak, and yet this man, this contradiction of confidence and silence, had unsettled her spirit. She caught her reflection in the cafe window and realized the truth. She was falling even as she tried to stand still. Malcolm tried to bury himself in work, meetings, calls, deadlines, anything to mute the noise of emotion. Yet everything reminded him of her. The rhythm of the elevator doors, the way light hit the office walls at noon, even the faint scent of coffee in the boardroom. He caught himself staring out of windows, wondering what she was doing, if she thought of him too. For a man who'd built his empire on logic, the heart was proving to be his most unpredictable investment. That night, the rain came down hard. Ariel stood by her window, watching droplets race down the glass. She told herself to let it go, to stop replaying his voice in her mind. Across town, Malcolm poured himself another drink, his tie loosened, his apartment dimly lit by the storm outside. They were two people on opposite sides of the same silence, pretending indifference when their hearts were already in motion. Somewhere between lightning and thunder, they both whispered the same thing. Don't fall. It started with something small. A rumor. A whisper passed through the city's polished social circles. Ariel's latest gallery show had caught attention, and one photograph, Malcolm's portrait, drew gossip. People assumed she and the elusive millionaire were involved. When the story reached him, Malcolm's first reaction wasn't pride, but fear. Control slipping. Reputation tangled with emotion. He called her, voice sharp, masking panic as authority. She met his tone with quiet disbelief. You think I'd use you for exposure? She said softly. Silence followed, long and heavy. That silence cracked the trust they hadn't yet admitted they'd built. Days passed without a word. The world moved, but between them, time froze. Ariel threw herself into work, her photographs turning darker, colder. Malcolm buried himself in numbers. Yet nothing silenced her voice echoing in his mind. When Ty, his closest friend, called him out, "You cared too much to pretend you don't." Malcolm didn't deny it. He just said, "She crossed a line." But his tone betrayed him. The line wasn't hers. It was his, drawn in fear, not truth. Ariel's art show opened on a rainy Friday. Crowds filled the space, admiring her work, unaware of the ache behind her smile. Malcolm didn't come. But his absence felt louder than any applause. Janelle tried to distract her with laughter and wine, but every time someone asked about the portrait, Ariel's heart sank. It wasn't just about the photo. It was about how someone could see her truth and still doubt it. By the end of the night, she slipped out into the rain, camera bag in hand, mascara streaking down like melted resolve. Malcolm saw her image in the paper the next morning, not the portrait she'd taken of him, but a photo of her walking alone after the show. Something about the loneliness in her posture broke him. He realized then it wasn't about reputation or control. It was about fear. Fear of needing someone. Fear of being seen. He drove to her studio that night, but when he arrived, the lights were off. Through the glass, he saw the photo of himself still hanging on her wall. For the first time in years, Malcolm Ross had no plan. Just a heart heavy with apology and a silence too thick to cross. Ariel returned late, umbrella dripping, surprised to find him there. For a long moment, neither spoke. The storm filled the silence. Then, softly, he said, "I was wrong." His voice cracked on the word. She studied him. This man who'd built his life on being unshakable, and saw honesty trembling in his eyes. "You can't control love, Malcolm," she said gently. He nodded, looking down, defeated but free. The rain eased, leaving only the sound of their breathing. For the first time, he didn't try to win. He just let himself feel. Morning light crept through the blinds of Ariel's studio, touching the space where Malcolm had stood hours before. The air still carried traces of rain, of apology, of something too heavy to name. She brewed tea in silence, her hands trembling slightly. Forgiveness was one thing. Trust was another. He'd said all the right words, but she couldn't unhear the doubt in his voice from days ago. Sometimes love isn't about who's right. It's about who's ready. And neither of them was. Malcolm spent the following days trying to pretend he was fine. Meetings came and went. Investors spoke. His assistant took notes, but nothing stuck. Every face blurred into hers. Every silence echoed her voice. Late one night, he found himself reading an old message she'd sent. Just her name at the bottom of an email. Soft and sincere. He didn't realize tears had come until one slid down his cheek, catching the faint glow of his computer screen. Power had never felt so small. Ariel threw herself into a new project. Portraits of strangers, faces that told stories she didn't have to live. Yet every shot reminded her of him. She told Janelle she was fine, smiled through the lie, and said she'd moved on. But at night, when the studio went still, she'd catch herself whispering his name under her breath like an unfinished sentence. Healing, she realized, isn't forgetting. It's learning how to hold the memory without breaking. Weeks passed. Malcolm and Ariel became ghosts in each other's routines, both pretending to move forward, neither truly letting go. When Naomi, Malcolm's mother, visited his office, she found him staring at a blank screen. "You can't build walls and expect someone to meet you inside," she said gently. Her words struck him like truth always does. Slow, painful, undeniable. For the first time, Malcolm admitted aloud, "I loved her." The confession felt like breathing after years underwater. That evening, Ariel took a walk through Piedmont Park where autumn leaves whispered against the path. The sky was bruised purple and gold, the kind of beauty that hurts to look at alone. She sat on a bench, pulling her scarf tighter, wondering if she'd ever see him again. not as the man who hurt her, but the one who tried to change. Somewhere across the city, Malcolm looked out his window at the same fading light. Two souls, finally still, separated not by distance, but by timing. Malcolm hadn't stepped inside his mother's house in months. It smelled like home, faint lavender, and old records. Naomi studied him with quiet wisdom, sensing the storm behind his composure. Over dinner, she asked nothing until his silence cracked on its own. "I thought I could control everything," he admitted. "Even love." She smiled gently. "You can't lead a heart like a company, son. You have to meet it where it's trembling." Her words landed deep. For the first time, Malcolm didn't argue. He just listened and let something in him begin to soften. The next morning, Malcolm found the courage to revisit places that once defined him. His old neighborhood, the park where he used to dream, the diner where his mother worked double shifts. He realized that success had built walls, not bridges. As he stood under the same oak tree he'd played near as a boy, he whispered, "What did all this cost me?" The answer came not in words, but in peace, the kind that only comes when you stop running from yourself. Across town, Ariel prepared for a new gallery exhibition, one that had nothing to do with clients or profit. It was called Stillness. Each photograph captured a piece of her healing, a reflection of people finding beauty in quiet pain. As she arranged the frames, she noticed something missing. One last wall, one last space. Her fingers brushed the empty spot, and she knew what belonged there. Not a photo of Malcolm, but of what he'd awakened in her. The courage to love without losing herself. Later that evening, Malcolm drafted an email. No excuses, no defense, just truth. He wrote about fear, pride, and how he'd mistaken control for strength. He thanked her for seeing him before he was ready to see himself. Then, before sending it, he paused. Some things can't be written, they need to be spoken. So he closed his laptop, grabbed his coat and left, not knowing what she'd say, only certain he had to say it. Ariel stood in her gallery when the door opened. She looked up. There he was, unsure but present. The air held that same hum as the night they first met, but softer now, realer. He didn't speak right away. When he finally did, his voice was steady. "You were right," he said. "Control isn't strength. It's fear dressed up." She smiled faintly, tears in her eyes. "And love?" she asked. He took a step closer. "Love is finally learning to let go." For the first time, she didn't flinch. The moment was still, full of everything they'd both learned to feel. The gallery was empty now, lights dimmed, the echo of visitors fading into memory. Ariel walked slowly through the space, her hand brushing each frame. Faces of strangers who'd learned to stay open after pain. Behind her, she felt his presence before she turned. Malcolm stood quietly, as if afraid to disturb the air between them. "You stayed," she said softly. "I had to," he replied. This time, there was no tension in his voice, just warmth, humility. They stood close but didn't touch, their silence saying what words couldn't. Some love stories aren't about falling, they're about returning. A week later, they met again. Not in an office or gallery, but in the park where she used to clear her mind. The trees swayed gently and laughter from children nearby carried through the air. They walked side by side, no agenda, no pressure. She told him about her upcoming exhibit in New York. He told her about taking time off for the first time in years. It wasn't about romance anymore. It was about presence. And that, in its quiet simplicity, felt more powerful than anything they'd known. Months later, at the opening of Ariel's New York exhibit, the crowd admired her new collection. Portraits of stillness, hope, and renewal. Malcolm stood quietly in the back, unseen, but smiling. Every photo told a story, but one caught his eye. An image of sunlight through rain, titled Control Unraveled. It was him, but not really. It was the version she'd helped him become. He didn't approach her that night. He didn't need to. Sometimes, love doesn't demand proof. It simply exists, steady and understood. Later that night, she stepped onto the rooftop of her hotel, city lights shimmering below. The air smelled of rain again, just like the night they met. Her phone buzzed. A message from him. "You were brilliant," she smiled, typing nothing back, just looking out into the skyline. Somewhere out there he was looking at the same sky, both of them knowing they didn't need to be together to remain connected. Growth had replaced longing, and peace, that beautiful, elusive peace, had finally come to stay. Months later, back in Atlanta, Malcolm hosted a charity gala, the same event where it all began. This time, he moved through the crowd differently. Open, unguarded, smiling without calculation. When he looked toward the entrance, she was there, laughing with friends, her presence calm and radiant. Their eyes met. No surprise, no tension, just recognition. They approached each other, not as strangers or lovers, but as two people who'd learned what love truly means. Freedom. As the music swelled, he whispered, almost to himself, "So this is what it feels like." And in her smile he found his answer.